On this episode of Battleground, the swing states, election disinformation. What is it? How is it being used? Are you a target? And what impact will it have in all 7 of our swing states? We'll dive deep into a critical topic in this election. Plus, how the sharing of false and misleading election information is targeting the Latino community. A look at how and why that is, and which states could be affected the most. Also, housing affordability. It's a big deal in many of our swing states, including out west in Nevada and Arizona. We'll talk to a real estate expert on how this could influence voters in all of the swing states. I'm S.E. Cupp, and this is Battleground, the swing states. Fake news. You've no doubt heard the term that some on the right have used to describe the media. I happen to hear it repeatedly in my nightmares. But it turns out it's a real thing, only not what you think. The real fake news is election disinformation, and it's attacking our democracy. Bad actors are spreading false information designed to discourage people from voting and undermine public trust in our elections. And where is it having the most impact? You guessed it, our 7 swing states. For starters, take a look at some of the most popular topics, according to the Associated Press, when it comes to spreading false or misleading information. Crime and public safety, abortion, education, and inflation. Now, if you play connections, you might be able to guess what they all have in common. They're critical issues in all 7 of our swing states that will decide this election. And who's most often targeted by disinformation attacks? According to a recent AP report, immigrants, people with language barriers, people who are not as familiar with the American media landscape, adults over 55 years old, and, wait for it, people who spend a lot of time on social media. I know I'm guilty of spending too much time on social media. What about you? All right, for more on this, I'm joined by Stephen Brill, well-known lawyer, journalist, entrepreneur, and author of a new book that could not be more timely and on target for our focus on the swing states. It's called The Death of Truth. Stephen, so great to see you. Stephen, you know the media landscape as well as, if not better than most people. So why is this book so urgent right now?
The book lays out the problem, which is that we can't have debates over serious issues if we don't agree on the same basic set of facts. Yeah. And what's happened in the world of social media and programmatic advertising is that we've been driven, off of agreement on basic facts and into our own little corners where Anthony Fauci's a genius and an expert, or Anthony Fauci is getting bribed by the drug companies to promote a vaccine that'll kill you.
Right. And I mean, I covered the last few elections. 2016 had disinformation. 2020 was impacted by disinformation. Is 2024 going to be worse somehow?
Oh, yeah, those are going to be the good old days.
Great.
The advent, and I use the word cautiously, of generative AI is that all of the misinformation and disinformation becomes a force multiplier. Just to give you an example, there's a guy operating out of a studio in Moscow who NewsGuard and the book uncovers as a Russian disinformation operative who actually fled Florida after he was indicted for hacking and extortion. And he has launched, in the space of a few weeks, 167 different hoax websites in the United States, spreading all varieties of Russian disinformation aimed at destabilizing us.
Every week on this show, we talk about how close the margins have been in the swing states over the past 2 election cycles. It's going to be another razor-thin race. Disinformation can have a big impact, even if it's only affecting a small percentage of people, right?
Well, that's the point, and it's an increasingly large percentage. But, for example, one of the stats I have in the book is sort of hard to believe, and that is that for the COVID vaccine, only 75% of adults in the United States opted to get the vaccine. If 90%, which is the usual take-up rate, had opted to get it, 225,000 more people would not have died.
In a moment, we're going to talk about the role of the media and government in policing disinformation. But what can we, the people, the voters in our 7 swing states, what can they do from to prevent this from impacting their decisions so that they're not ignoring it, avoiding it, or not even realizing it's in front of them?
And it's not about politics. It's not about liberals or conservatives. It's about basic core facts. Did Hank Aaron die from a COVID vaccine? No, he didn't. Vladimir Putin get $100 million from the United States to buy King Charles's estate in Highgrove, which is another favorite of this Russian disinformation operative. No, he didn't. That's a fact. That's not an opinion. But we've been reduced to a world, and certainly a country, where everybody has an opinion about everything.
Well, Stephen Brill, thank you so much. Your book is very timely. It's called The Death of Truth, and I hope everyone reads it in time for 2024.
Well, thank you.
Lawmakers in some of our swing states are fighting back. In both Arizona and Wisconsin, new laws have been passed making it harder to disseminate false and misleading information, with a particular focus on AI. And in Georgia, you probably remember this viral video used to falsely accuse two poll workers of improper ballot counting. Well, it spread like wildfire on social media, and it caused irreparable harm to both women. And for all of our swing state voters, a good next question is this: what can the media and government agencies like the FCC do? Now we bring in Jeffery Gee, a former official with the FCC's Enforcement Bureau. Jeffrey, so good to have you with us.
Thank you very much.
So, Jeffrey, I think it's important to tell our voters a dirty secret, an inconvenient truth, which is that it is legal to lie in campaign ads. While we have truth in advertising laws, we have no such laws mandating that candidates be honest. Is that right?
So I'm not sure I'd put it that candidates are allowed to lie so much as the laws governing political advertising, particularly in front of the FCC, does not allow broadcasters and cable operators to censor their speech. First Amendment values are so core around political speech that it's actually part of the rules that for federal candidates, at least, broadcasters need to take those ads and they're not allowed to censor them.
Right, which means they're allowed to air false information and they're allowed to lie in campaign ads. I just think that's so wild to imagine as a voter. We have consumer protections for the things we buy, but we're just, I guess, supposed to navigate these campaign ads by ourselves.
I think it's important to note that there are layers within the media sphere right now. You've got broadcasters and cable operators that are highly regulated and, again, are not allowed to censor those ads, but they have to take them. But I think viewers need to keep in mind that if they're watching on YouTube or Facebook, they're in an entirely different media environment where the rules can be entirely different.
The vast majority of campaign ads are going to play in our 7 swing states. Is there more of a focus by officials on these states because they're going to get the bulk of these ads?
Within the swing states, Michigan and Wisconsin, as you noted, have laws on the books that at the least require disclosure when AI-generated images are used. Arizona just 3 weeks ago passed a new law that's interesting insofar as it creates a fast track for candidates that have been impersonated by AI content to get an injunction against such things. I know Georgia is considering laws right now, one that would make it a crime to use artificially generated deep fake ads to impersonate candidates. Pennsylvania has more than one law that they're considering, one that would require disclosure of AI-generated content, another that would ban AI impersonations of candidates for public office entirely.
Well, that's really interesting, and it sounds like all of that is in the works. But we have an election around the corner. If some of this isn't sorted out legislatively before the election, what advice would you give to voters in how to discern what's real and what's AI?
I think that voters need to keep an open mind about where they're getting their information and how trustworthy it is. I think looking to more than one source can be really important. Generally speaking, again, your internet sources, your Facebook, your YouTube, what have you, is an unregulated space right now. And therefore, again, you need to take your media literacy game up a notch and consider your sources.
Such good, important advice. Jeffery Gee, thanks so much. Up next, a look at why disinformation campaigns are disproportionately aimed at non-English speaking communities. And speaking of media, we asked our swing state voters what their primary source of news is. Visit battlegroundnews.com to weigh in and see what others are saying. Stay with us. Battleground will be right back.
I really care about our country.
Yeah.
And want to see us get back to some normalcy of the way we think.
As promised, we go to the voters in the swing states to hear directly from them. Each week, we're sending Battleground videographers out to all corners of our 7 swing states to talk to the people who will decide this election. Now back to election disinformation, an issue that has an outsized effect on non-English speaking voters. And here in many of our swing states, that means the Latino community. According to a report by Social Lens Research, Hispanics are more likely to share social media content than non-Hispanics. And as we've seen, social media is a key driver of disinformation. In 5 of our swing states, the Latino population is at about 5%, but in Arizona and Nevada, that jumps up to over 20% of eligible voters. In a close election, the Latino vote could easily swing the election one way or the other in all 7 of our states. For more on this, we welcome Laura Zommer, co-founder and CEO of Factchequeado, an initiative created to counter disinformation in the Latino community. So we spelled out some of it, but explain why the Latino community in particular is more susceptible to election disinformation.
Yeah, there's different reasons. One of them is for sure that not all the Latino population consume news in the same way that the average white American. Latino population use much more their device to get information, and particularly use WhatsApp. WhatsApp is a place where Latinos share content, not just with the people living in the US, but also with some of their families and friends living in countries in different parts of Latin America.
Yeah, so you mentioned WhatsApp, and most of us are familiar with that, but what about some other social media platforms and apps? How much is like Twitter or X or Instagram or Facebook a factor in all of this?
What we know from recent research published by NYU and San Diego University is that the most popular platform to get the news for Latinos still is Facebook, but Latinos use much more for discuss about politics and to consume news related to public policy, YouTube, and WhatsApp.
And so specifically, what is your organization doing to combat disinformation in these communities?
We mainly have 3 pillars. One is collaboration. We are trying to create a big network. We already have 90 partners that are media, local partners covering in Spanish the news. The second pillar is it's not enough just to translate from English to Spanish the content. There's some topics, there's some issues that are particular for these communities, and we need to fill that gaps. And the third one is be sure that our content is in the format they choose to get their news or consume their news.
That's important too. Okay, well, Laura Zommer, thank you so much for joining us from Factchequeado. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
For more on all this, visit us at battlegroundnews.com, where you can sign up for our newsletter, download our interactive swing state map, and find our social media links. As always, we'll share your feedback right here and online. Battleground, the swing states, will be right back, but first, more from some voters in Arizona about this race.
If the election took place today, who would you vote for?
Maybe Claudia De La Cruz.
I don't know. I don't think either candidate.
I don't think I'm gonna vote.
Why not?
I don't think it counts or it matters.
Battleground will be right back. Welcome back to Battleground, the swing states. Housing affordability and housing availability are big issues this cycle. but they often get lost in the mix of other hot-button issues. Make no mistake, it's on a lot of voters' minds. High interest rates are pricing many people out of the market, especially young families trying to buy their first home. For more on how housing is impacting swing state voters, we turn to Nicholas Irwin, Research Director at the Leeds Center for Real Estate at UNLV. Nick, thanks for being here. So housing affordability is impacting voters everywhere, but Nevada, as you know, has experienced a huge population boom over the past couple of decades. What are the key issues surrounding housing in Nevada this year?
Well, there are a lot of key issues surrounding housing here. We have a couple of big things that are really bubbling up on the surface. We have concern about investor-owned purchases, investors coming and purchasing a lot of single-family homes and then turning those over to the rental market. We have a concern with a lot of our land in the state is controlled by the federal government, something over 80% of our land. And we are starting to run a little short on that land. Last sort of estimates are we've got about 8 years left of buildable land, especially here in southern Nevada, where the majority of the people live. So, we're really looking to the federal government to convert some of that land back over. And then we have this population boom has really taken off post-COVID, and we have a lot of people coming in with much higher incomes than people here especially in southern Nevada, and they're being outcompeted for houses.
Well, and we know that a rise in interest rates is also impacting how people are viewing housing and this issue. What could that mean for voters in Nevada?
Yeah, it's really interesting. We're seeing houses, when they go on the market now, are really transacting quickly. So there are a lot of people, if you're okay with paying that higher interest rate, but there are a lot of people who are what we say they're trapped, they're locked into a house that may not be right for them right now. They'd like to move. Maybe they've had some kids go off to college and they want to downsize, or maybe they've had a couple kids. And they're trying to move into a bigger house, but it's really tough. I mean, you're looking at, with just the difference in interest rates, it's an extra $1,000, $1,250 a month just in pure interest payments, and it's really tough.
And what about the rise in rent? That's an issue too, no?
It's been, at least in southern Nevada, it's coming down a little bit, but a little bit is, it's not a lot. A big relief to people who remember, you could get a 2-bedroom apartment for $1,500 pre-COVID. That's not coming back anytime soon. We're looking at $2,000 at least for a 2-bedroom. And a lot of the issues is there may be availability, but it may not be in the places people want to live.
Nicholas Irwin from UNLV, many thanks.
Cheers.
Up next, we pay a visit to our key swing states to gauge where the presidential horse race is here in the middle of June. We'll be right back. Battleground will be right back. Welcome back to Battleground, the swing states. We close again this week with a quick trip to our key swing states to ask one question. What is the state of the presidential race as we sit here tonight? We start out west in Arizona with Axios political reporter Jeremy Duda. Jeremy, last week we saw Trump up slightly. Where are we today?
Arizona is in play. Joe Biden narrowly won this traditionally Republican state in 2020, so we know it's winnable for him. But Donald Trump has consistently led the polls here this year.
Thank you, Jeremy. Staying out west to Nevada and the Dean of Nevada Political Reporters, John Ralston of the Nevada Independent. So Trump was up double digits last week, John. Where are we now?
Both parties think Nevada is in play, but the Republicans are especially confident for the first time since 2004 that they can win Nevada because Donald Trump has led in every public poll for more than 6 months. The Democratic machine here is still formidable, and Nevada is still going to be relatively close.
Now to Michigan and Fox 47 in Lansing, we find senior reporter Danny Valle. Danny, a neck-and-neck race there last week. How about now?
Yeah, tight might be the best way to describe this race, and it also might be an understatement. The latest numbers show former President Trump with a lead of 0.5%, and that's based off 52 polls. And with numbers that close, we expect to see a lot of the candidates over the next several months.
Thanks, Danny. Now to Wisconsin and Fox 6 News political reporter Jason Calvi. Jason, last week you had Donald Trump up slightly. Where are we this week?
Essie, was it just a game of political telephone? Last week, Punchbowl News reported the former president in a private meeting with House Republicans called Milwaukee a horrible city. Now, in an interview with Fox News, he said he was talking about crime and about elections. And on Saturday, he said the whole story was a complete lie. Now, what exactly will this mean in Battleground, Wisconsin? Democrats have pounced. They put up 10 billboards attacking the former president in these purported words of a horrible city. But the voters we've been talking to in this swing state say they're not sure that this is actually going to convince voters or sway them come Election Day.
We head down to Georgia now and Fox 5's Deirdre Dukes. Deirdre, it appeared Trump had a slight lead last week. Where are we today?
A recent poll of Georgia voters shows former President Trump with a narrow lead in the 2024 rematch with 5 points over President Biden. Now, the poll was taken just days after Trump's conviction in his New York hush money trial. And here in Georgia, Trump's 2020 election interference trial is on hold until a lower court rules on whether the district attorney can stay on the case. And it looks like the case will not move forward until after the election.
And finally, back here in Pennsylvania, and Aaliyah Schneider from the Philadelphia Inquirer. Aaliyah, a close race here last week. How about now?
Our recent poll done in partnership with the New York Times and Siena College showed Donald Trump with a 3-point lead in Pennsylvania. But this was within the margin of error, so we view the candidates as head-to-head.
Thanks, Aaliyah. That's a wrap for tonight. We'll see you back here next time on Battleground, the Swing States.